The transport bay thrummed with the low hum of grav engines, casting a pale blue light over rows of armored giants. Alien warriors stood shoulder to shoulder, scaled Crothians with tusks like daggers, chittering Irex with multiple limbs flexing in anticipation, and the luminous Avani whose feathers shimmered with a bioluminescent glow. They laughed, traded war chants, checked their weapons with practiced ease. And then there was the human. Cain Voss sat alone on an ammo crate, helmet at his feet, eyes distant. He was lean, compact by comparison, wrapped in matte black armor without insignia or flair. No tribal marks, no battle ribbons, no ceremonial weapons. Just a long, unassuming rifle resting across his lap, and a silence that unnerved even the most hardened veterans. "He speaks?" One of the Irex hissed to his neighbor, not quietly. "Only to ghosts," another muttered. They chuckled, but Cain didn't flinch. He ran a cloth along the barrel of his rifle, slowly, methodically. Not in ritual, but in ritual's shadow, a quiet habit born from necessity, not belief. "Coalition quota filler," growled Commander Threx, stepping into the bay. His massive bulk made the floor creak under his weight. "One human per interspecies squad. Politicians want a flag planted on every kill, even if the hands behind the trigger are brittle." A few more laughed. Cain looked up just once, eyes cold, not angry, and returned to his work. They underestimated him. That was fine. They all did. "Listen up," Threx barked, silencing the bay. A 3D holomap flickered to life above his wrist unit. "Our objective is Razorclaw Gorge. Deep entrenchment of Zarn's scum. Minimal air support, tight terrain, perfect for their ambushes. We'll insert under cover of pre-dawn and punch through their forward nests." He gestured to zones of elevation on the map. "Overwatch here and here. I'll need eyes on high. Voss, you'll take this ridge." Cain nodded once. "No questions, no objection." "Don't fall asleep out there, sniper," the Avani scout said with a smirk. "We'll be doing the real fighting." Cain didn't look up. The drop pods launched at 0300. The descent was violent, turbulence slamming bodies into harnesses, metal groaning under gravitational pressure. Cain's pod hissed open in silence. No war cry, no stomp of boots. Just the whisper of movement as he climbed out, shouldered his rifle, and scaled the ridge without waiting. The battlefield below was a jagged expanse of obsidian rock and narrow passes veiled in sulfuric mist. The Zarn loved these environments. Natural choke points, easy to booby-trap, and hard to see more than 20 feet ahead. Perfect killing ground. Cain moved like a shadow. No sound. No wasted motion. He reached the ridge and dropped prone, setting his rifle on its bipod. Through his scope, the world transformed. Thermal overlays, motion detection, acoustic triangulation. He tagged landmarks, calibrated wind vectors, and set his line of fire. Far below, the main squad advanced, gleaming armor, loud and proud. Their radio chatter was already a wall of noise. Cain turned off the external feed. He didn't need it. His fingers hovered near the trigger, eyes scanning. Movement. A heat signature blinked to life in the upper right of his HUD, cold-blooded, slow-crawling. Zarn recon unit, slithering between rocks, flanking the Crothians. Unmarked by any of the team, Cain fired. A puff of gas. No bang. One silent breath. One enemy down. Another blinked into view. Firing pattern calculated. Wind shift, elevation drop. Another squeeze. Another body hit the dirt. He exhaled. Down below, a Crothian turned and looked around in confusion. "Who the hell's watching our backs?" No one answered. Cain was already tracking the next target. He remembered his first battlefield. How they'd mocked him then, too. Too quiet. Too slow. Too soft. And then, when the bodies fell and he stood alone among them, they stopped laughing. That was always how it went. He didn't need them to understand. He needed them alive. His scope shifted left. Explosion. The Irex squad tripped a trap. Flaming shards of metal cut through their formation. Kane identified the launcher nest in 3 seconds. 2 Zarn, buried in a crevice, angled perfectly to blindside the survivors. He fired twice. Perfect hits. The Irex never saw the shooters, only the aftermath. Enemy limbs smoking in the dark. Someone muttered on the line, "Sniper's good." "Damn good." Kane didn't respond. Didn't need to. He adjusted slightly, bracing for the next wave. The enemy hadn't even begun to press. Razorclaw Gorge was notorious for layered defenses. And the Zarn weren't just brutes. They were hunters. Silent, patient. Like him. He liked that. Another flicker. Movement on the far side near the Avani's path. Kane tagged 3 snipers roost high, hidden in thermal-reflective mesh. He fired once. The first dropped. The other 2 turned, wrong move. Their motion exposed them to his recalibrated scope. 2 more shots. 2 more down. Below, the Avani stumbled, blinking up at the sudden silence. Kane didn't wait for thanks. His trigger finger relaxed for the briefest moment. He could already feel the next wave coming. This ridge would hold. He'd make sure of it. And when the day ended, they'd stop calling him Ghost. They'd start calling him Necessary. The gorge erupted in gunfire as the Zarn struck with precision. Plasma bolts hissed through the air, carving glowing arcs across the rocky terrain. The coalition forces scrambled, suddenly less coordinated, less invincible. Bodies dove for cover behind jagged stone, and cries for medics echoed in a dozen tongues. Kane Voss watched it all from above, still prone, his rifle locked onto the battlefield. The enemy had waited until the team was deep enough into the kill zone, typical Zarn tactic. Trap, encircle, annihilate. He adjusted his scope and tracked movement beneath the sulfur mist. The heat signatures of the Zarn shimmered, barely visible unless you knew what to look for. Kane had learned to spot their pulse, that subtle difference in how they shifted weight or hesitated before emerging. They weren't beasts. They were deliberate, lethal. His first shot severed the ambush on the Crothian's left flank. A Zarn trooper toppled mid-leap, weapon tumbling from its claws. Kane swept right, following the arc of another attacker preparing to detonate a charge behind the Irex. One pull of the trigger. No explosion. Down below, chaos slowed. Just a fraction. Enough for the surviving squads to reposition. The command channel crackled. "Unknown marksman, respond." Kane didn't answer. "Whoever that is, keep doing it." A Crothian roared back to his feet, dragging a wounded Irex behind cover. The tide hadn't turned, but it had stopped retreating. That was enough for now. Kane's jaw clenched. He didn't smile. This wasn't satisfaction. It was necessity. A high-pitched frequency buzzed in his ear, enemy interference. Kane tapped a side switch, filtering the noise. He switched to optical scan, highlighting 3 heat signatures scuttling along the cliffs behind coalition lines. Enemy saboteurs. No one saw them. Kane lined up the first. Adjusted. Fired. The second jerked back. Fired again. The third dove, but not fast enough. Below, a comm officer gasped. "Backline breach neutralized. What the hell?" Kane moved again, inching along the ridge to a new position. Every time he fired, the enemy recalibrated. He couldn't stay still for long. The Zarn had sharp eyes. Sharper instincts. He caught a glimpse of one now, larger than the rest, commanding gestures, relaying orders through a flick of bioluminescent tendrils. Kane slowed his breath. Centered. The shot echoed only in his own skull. The enemy leader crumpled. The rest hesitated. That was enough. The Avani, once flippant, was now ducked behind cover, panting. Her feathers no longer shimmered, they lay flat, dulled by grit and fear. "Command, someone's clearing the nest." "Not us." Threxa's voice, gravel and disbelief, came through. "How many did we lose?" "Too many," someone answered. "But we'd all be dead if not for whoever's on Overwatch." Still Kane said nothing. Still he watched. The battlefield pulsed with desperation. He recognized it. It felt like the night his old unit had gone dark on Vega 9. He'd radioed warnings, told them to wait. But they were loud, confident. They hadn't listened. None of them made it out. That was the last time Kane tried to speak sense. Now he just acted. A tremor rippled through the ground. The Zarn were tunneling. A new flank. His HUD flared a warning. Kane tapped a quick sequence into his rifle, activating a seismic sensor grid. The readout bloomed across his lens. There. He marked a red zone, then another. Below, Threx's forces hesitated. No one understood what the markers meant. Not at first. But then the Crothian squad veered away from a rock cluster. Moments before it exploded upward, Zarn burst from the soil, only to meet a wall of fire from prepared guns. Someone whispered, "He's guiding us." Kane zeroed in on the next wave. The Zarn were adapting, spreading out, trying to isolate the wounded. Kane picked them off one by one. He wasn't just shooting. He was shaping the fight, directing traffic, turning chaos into pattern. The Avani finally spoke into the command channel. "He's leading. That sniper, he's not just covering us. He's orchestrating the field." Kane's eye twitched. He didn't want leadership, just result. Another detonation rocked the northern slope. Friendly fire. Miscommunication. A Crothian squad mistook retreating Zarn for advancing ones. Kane saw it before it happened. Could have prevented it. But he hesitated. The blast silenced the comms for 5 seconds. Kane clenched his teeth. He toggled back to the open channel. For the first time since insertion, he spoke. "Next kill zone, mark Echo 4. Advance with caution." Silence. Then, "Was that Voss?" "Yeah," someone muttered. "Guess the ghost talks." He ignored them. Scanned again. Adjusted. Fired. 3 more down. The tide was breaking. The Zarn were falling back. He could see it in their movement, no longer surging, now weaving. Controlled retreat. They knew they were losing ground. And they knew who was doing it. Kane could feel their eyes on the ridge. Let them look. Let them remember. He tracked one final target. Taller, heavier exosuit, probably a commander trying to evacuate a data core. Kane lined up the shot. It was nearly a kilometer out. Wind fluctuating. Target weaving. He inhaled. Held. Fired. The figure dropped. Below, a cheer went up from Threx's squad. Someone shouted, "He did it again. Sniper's a damn phantom." Kane exhaled. He slid back from his perch. His rifle was almost too warm to touch. Battery indicators flashing red. He'd have to recharge before the next wave. If there was a next wave. He descended the ridge slowly, eyes still scanning the horizon. For now, the battlefield had quieted. But quiet was never permanent. Kane reached the base of the ridge as dusk draped the gorge in copper shadows. Sulfur fog still coiled between the rocks, but the battlefield had stilled. The Zarn were gone, either retreating into the deep tunnels or lying motionless among the stones, limbs twisted in death. Coalition medics moved through the wreckage, tagging bodies and stabilizing the wounded. He passed a scorched Irix warrior half buried in rubble. The insectoid clicked once in thanks before slumping into sleep. Further on, a Crothian leaned against a jagged slab, armor cracked, tusk chipped. He looked up as Kane approached. "You saved us," he growled, voice thick with blood. "Didn't expect it. Didn't think you'd make it past the drop." Kane didn't answer. He just nodded and kept moving. The command tent had been hastily erected in a crater rimmed with carbon scoring. Inside, flickering hollow maps glowed against the dust. Commander Threx stood hunched over the table, arms crossed, jaw clenched. He looked up when Kane entered. "You didn't follow comms protocol," Threx said, voice flat. "Went radio dark. Issued commands without clearance." Kane met his stare. "I issued commands because you were about to lose 37 soldiers." Threx's brow twitched, but he didn't argue. Instead, he growled, "Your kill count's pushing 100. Triple the combined score of your whole squad." Kane said nothing. "Avani scout says you saw movements no one else could." The Irex said you predicted the enemy before they surfaced. Kane removed his helmet and placed it gently on the table. I've studied the Zarn for years. I know how they think. That ridge wasn't luck, it was preparation. Threx nodded once, grudging. And why the hell don't you talk more often? Kane looked away. Because too many people die while talking. The tent fell silent. The holomap shifted, displaying wider terrain, next sectors marked in red. Razorclaw Gorge had only been the edge. Kane's eyes narrowed. They weren't trying to win. This was a test run. A feint. They wanted to see our response time, overwatch capabilities, coordination. Threx grunted. So they know our weaknesses now. Kane nodded. And they'll be back. Smarter. Harder to track. Behind them, the flap rustled. The Avani scout stepped in, her feathers dimmed by grime but her posture proud. She studied Kane for a moment, something unreadable in her expression. I misjudged you, she said softly. You saved my life. Kane shrugged. You weren't the first. Won't be the last. You don't even hesitate, do you? She asked. Just choose who lives, who dies, without blinking. He looked at her, and for a moment the mask cracked. I hesitate all the time, he said. I just don't let it stop me. The Avani gave a slow nod and exited. Threx turned back to the map. Command wants a briefing. They'll be asking about your method. They'll want to replicate it. Kane's voice was tired now. They can't. Not unless they train people to live alone in the dark for years. You can't teach instinct. You can't clone experience. Threx studied him. And if we don't learn? Kane picked up his rifle, now recharged. Then the next ridge will be bloodier. And they'll still call in the ghost. He stepped outside into the night. Stars blinked overhead, indifferent and cold. Fires burned low among the rocks, casting long shadows of soldiers who'd survived by chance and skill, and one sniper who had seen it all before it happened. Kane walked past the others, who watched him now with something between awe and uncertainty. Not a joke. Not a quota filler. A necessary force. Somewhere out there, the Zarn regrouped, studied, waited. And Kane would be waiting too, silent, watching, trigger ready. The next engagement came sooner than expected. 3 days after Razorclaw, the Coalition's forward scouts vanished. Entire squads went silent within hours. No distress signals. No debris. Just absence. The kind that made command uneasy, and Kane Voss more alert than ever. He lay prone again. Different ridge, different sky, same silence. His new overwatch position overlooked a ravine called Black Vein, deeper than Razorclaw, with cliffs that bled steam and fissures wide enough to swallow tank. A bad place for visibility. Worse for survival. But perfect for an ambush. Through his scope, Kane watched the advance team fan out. They were more cautious now, slower, tighter formation. His influence. They didn't say it aloud, but their paths shifted according to his markers. Their glances flicked toward high ground more often. Respect born from survival. Still, it wasn't enough. The first sign came as a whisper through the wind, too faint for most to hear, but Kane had trained for frequencies like this. He tweaked the gain on his audio sensors and caught it. Zarn clicked. Low pattern. Coordinated. Not random scouts, full units. He keyed into the command channel. Freeze. All squads halt. You're being boxed in. They obeyed. No hesitation this time. Kane scanned fast. Heat signatures began flickering into view, not from the front, but the sides. Tunneling again. Smarter this time. No tremors, no seismic trails. Zarn have new tactics. Side breach. You've got 60 seconds to reposition. Western slope. Move now. Threx's voice crackled back. We copy. Moving. Kane's pulse remained steady, even as red signatures multiplied. He started picking them off before they surfaced. One, then another. His shots had to be precise. Not just kills, but momentum breakers. He tagged the central advance node, a communication carrier. Dropped it. The Zarn formations wavered, confused. That hesitation saved a Crothian squad from a plasma barrage. But the Zarn were faster now, responding to fire patterns. Kane shifted position immediately, crawling sideways along the cliff edge, rifle cradled like glass. A shimmer caught his eye. A cloaked figure, nearly invisible, was climbing the opposite ridge, headed toward his position. Kane had seen something like it in recon archives. Zarn assassins. Rare. Precise. Sent for single target. Him. He rotated calmly, adjusting for wind, led the target by half a meter, fired. The figure jerked, lost footing, tumbled. Its shimmer failed, revealing coiled limbs and spined armor. Confirmed kill. They weren't just adapting. They were learning him. Kane shifted again, this time lower. They'd traced his firing angles. He had to rework the map in real time. Threx's squads reached the western slope, set up defensive perimeters. More disciplined now, coordinated. But the Zarn kept coming, hundreds, relentless. For the first time, Kane's magazine ran dry mid-scan. He swapped it fast, but it shook him. The rhythm was off. He toggled backup vision modes. Saw movement in an upper fissure. 5 Zarn. Sentries, watching. Not engaging. Reporting. He didn't fire. Instead, he keyed a direct line to Threx. They're watching. Testing. This is another feint. They're cataloging us. Threx grunted. Let them watch. We'll break their lines. They're not committing, Kane said. They don't care about the outcome. Just our response. Silence. Then, so what do we do? Kane hesitated, just briefly. Then, we stop playing their game. He pulled back from the ridge. Walked, not ran, toward a new vantage point 30 meters north. From there, he could see the full layout of the gorge and the positions of both sides. Then he did something no one expected. He fired not at the Zarn, but into a cache of volatile fuel left from a downed transport. The explosion was thunderous. The ground shook. Both sides paused. Smoke billowed across the gorge. Chaos. Into that chaos, Kane moved. Down the slope. Rifle holstered. Sidearm out. Voss, what are you doing? Threx barked through the channel. Kane didn't answer. He sprinted to the enemy side, into the chaos, and dropped a relay beacon the Zarn couldn't track. Spoofed frequencies, jamming nodes, interference pulses. Then he sprinted back. 30 seconds later, coalition artillery, summoned by the beacon, landed hard and fast, erasing a full Zarn nest. The scouts fled. The watchers disappeared. The advance stopped. Kane reached the ridge again, panting, knelt with his rifle, and finished the last 2 stragglers trying to retreat with intel. The gorge was quiet again. Not still. Never still. But quiet. Threx came over the comms, voice low. That move, no approval, no protocol. But it worked, Kane replied. Another pause. Then, we'll debrief in 2 hours. Don't vanish. Kane sat down beside his rifle. His gloves trembled slightly as he removed them. He didn't look like a ghost now. He looked human. Tired. Real. But in every soldier's eyes that met his later, there was the same shift. Not curiosity. Not fear. Recognition. Of a weapon you don't understand, but trust.